Now let's go to some technical skills and then we'll wrap it up for today. Okay. So example of some technical skills that you might encounter for a security analyst. What are some of the frameworks that you are familiar with? Now, frameworks, if you don't know what frameworks are, then you run into issues here, right? But this shouldn't be a surprise question because on their job description, they will list that you should have a working knowledge or you should be familiar with this framework, that framework, that framework. So maybe probably PCI, DSS, HIPAA, NIST 853, or NIST RMF, or the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or CIS controls, or ISO 20. They will list all those there. And mostly they will list exactly what they use in that company, right? So if you overlook it and they ask you such a question and you are there like, or if maybe they listed ISO 2701 and maybe a CIS control version 8, and they ask you what frameworks are you familiar with, and you're talking about PCI DSS and NIST 850, you just shot yourself in the foot because you don't know what they want, right? I mean, you know some frameworks, that is good, but it's not what they are looking for. So it means when they employ you, they are going to run into issues because you don't know these frameworks in the first place, let alone how to implement them, okay? So the answers to most of these questions are in the job description. Please take time and look at them well. And most of these are not going to come as a surprise, okay? Now I'll give us a scenario where, and also with the frameworks, you don't have to be a master of any of those frameworks. You need to have a working knowledge, right? So know enough about them to talk intelligently about them. Nobody can master all the frameworks. I can tell you that on authority, okay? Even the ones that you use like on daily basis, you know, you might know a lot about it, but I'm telling you, you are not the master of it. Because if we take the framework like the printout and stuff, you'll be able to, because you've been using it for a while, say a thing or two about some of it, but we are humans, you might forget some of it and stuff like that, right? So you have to have a good working knowledge, right? So for most of the companies that will just list like a bunch of frameworks, they don't expect you to be an expert in all of them, but they expect you to have enough working knowledge or even where to find them and know exactly what they are and what they are for, okay? So, I mean, that is the way around frameworks. So give us a scenario where you implemented a framework in your organization. Same things, tax, situation, tax, action, results, right? So whatever framework you're familiar with, you can speak to that, how you implemented that and how that happened. Now, mostly to answer these questions, for somebody who has never worked in a cybersecurity setting, right? Maybe depending on where you had your training, or if you are doing self-study and you are just reading this stuff on your own, I really, maybe if you just want to stretch the truth, or if you want to stretch yourself a little bit, I mean, you can still speak to that, but mostly for somebody who has not really had that exposure or has not had anybody with that exposure explain exactly how this works, answering this question will be a bit hard, frankly, right? Because just speaking what you read in some book is different from if you've actually done it. But also, if you have somebody who has done it and they've explained to you and you try to mimic that, that can also help you to speak effectively about this. Because if I told you how it is being done and I kind of showed you and you practiced, it's the same thing that you're going to be doing, right? So if you speak to that, they'll be able to know that, oh yeah, this person can do it, right? And how do you reduce the cyber risks of an organization? So this is an open-ended question. And it should still be related to what the organization is looking for, because there are so many answers that you can give to this question and you'll be right. But if your answers are not directly in relation to what they are looking for, you are not going to get it, right? So let's say they are looking for a security analyst, and maybe probably this company, they are a software company, okay? So for software companies, how do you reduce the risks of a software company? Just off head, OWASP top 10 is where you make your money, right? OWASP top 10 is where you have all the threats that, you know, softwares encounter, right? The top 10, and this is like a research that is done in the industry. They update it, I think every 2 years. So how do you reduce the risks of the organization? If you know maybe at least one or two of the world, or you can just, if you don't know them by list, you can just talk about, using that as a starting point to identify, some of the, like the most common vulnerabilities that are out there or that might be associated with the software your organization is using, and also know some of the threats that can take advantage of these vulnerabilities. And based on that, you can do your risk assessment and then go into your risk management area. Now, this question has some twist to it as well. Without being very specific to the organization, right? You should have a very good understanding of cybersecurity, risk management. So before even risk management, you should understand what cyber risk is, right? Risk, like, have a better understanding of what do we really mean when we talk about risks in cybersecurity. What does it entail? So for anybody who is not familiar with it or doesn't know, when we talk about risks in cybersecurity, two main things that we're talking about here is vulnerability and threats, right? So vulnerability being weaknesses in your system, threats being agents that can take advantage of, or like dangers that are out there that can take advantage of your vulnerabilities, right? And we have something we call exploitation. So if your threats exploit your vulnerabilities, there is a risk. Or if there's that likelihood for it to happen, then that is what we call risk. So if you understand these fundamentals well, and you understand risk assessment and risk management, you'll be able to scale this question easy, right? So, and you don't have to, it's just the fundamentals. If you understand them well, and you really understand how they all work, together, you'll be able to scale this question easy. Okay, what security controls are you familiar with? So it should be, are you here? There was a typo. Are you familiar with? How did you apply any of these controls? So countermeasures, like security controls. So we can look at it from different angles: identity and access management, from security architecture, from cryptography aspect, encryption, and all those are security measures and countermeasures. Security awareness training is also a key security control, right? And you can also look at just purely security controls or access controls as well, right? So there is no one way to answer this, but because we don't have a job description, that is why I'm saying like the general stuff. If there is a natural job description, this has to be tailored to the job description. And when you read the job description, you know exactly what they mean by which security controls. They might have some security controls listed on there that they are looking for, right? So you can speak to that rather than just saying that ones that are good controls, but that is not what they are looking for, okay? What SIM tools are you familiar with? Now, with everybody on here, and before you go to these interviews, please make sure you know the tools, right? So you don't necessarily have to know how to use all of it, but at least you should know them by grouping, right? So when we talk about vulnerability scanning tools, at least you should be able to name maybe some of the top 3 or top 2 brands that are out there. SIM tools, you should be able to name at least top 3 or top 2 brands out there, right? If you talk about like SAW tools, you should be able to name top 3. GRC tools, you should be able to name at least top 2 or top 3 and know what they are used for, right? Port scanning tools, you should be able to name. Don't say, oh, I don't have the working experience, or I don't know. Working experience is not going to let you know the tools. I can, tell you that on authority, because when you get to the organization, and that is if you're able to even scale the organization, scale the interview without knowing the tools. If they are an organization that uses a lot of tools, you have to let them know that you know the tools before they can even let you into the door. Now, if for some reason they don't interview you and they just employ you because you are that cool, you're going to run into issues, because now they have all this list of tools, and you think somebody is going to take their time and every day take you through step by step how to. No, they are not. They are just going to tell you, this is this, this is this, we use this for this. Okay, so go do this. That's it, right? So make sure you know your tools, right? And mostly for some of these tools, they have community versions, which are free, right? That is what we normally use for hands-on training. because some of these tools are expensive, right? I was trying to get one for Eretmis, and they were quoting like license of almost like 65,000 a year. Like, okay, chill out. Okay. I mean, I have other products that I can use. I just wanted to know, right? Some of these tools are expensive. So, and some of them are gracious enough to have community versions to help people like yourself, and, students and people who want to get into the industry or familiarize themselves with these tools, right? And also it serves as a way to market their like products anyways, right? So you can download those free ones, practice with it. And some of the tools also have like some tutorials on it and stuff, right? Although it's not going to really dive deep into how to use it, but at least how to move around, that is enough to say that you have a working knowledge of those tools, right? So before you jump, for anybody who is just doing maybe self-study, and before you just say, oh, I passed 2 certifications, I'm good, let me go get a job. Please don't go to interviews and you're going to look like, who brought this guy here? Because you don't know any tool, right? And you're not familiar even with like brand names within the tool, right? So you have to familiarize yourself with that. Now, how do you execute an information security program? And well, by the way, we have a hands-on training that will take you through the tools, right? So you can take a look at that if you are interested in that. So security, information security programs, how do you execute that? I mean, that is also one of the questions that you can use STAR method to answer. What risks and compliance tools are you familiar with? Same thing, going into tools. What are the greatest? And also with these, with the tools, I want to go back onto that real quick because it's very important. So with the tools, if they ask you which SIM tools you are familiar with, if in their job description they name some SIM tools, please look those up. Even if you are not really, you work with other ones and not those ones, look them up and try to familiarize yourself with it, because that is what they want to hear, that you know how to use the ones that they are using, not some other tools that are elsewhere, right? Or because if, let's say, they are using QRadar and you are used to using, or you know how to use Splunk, look up QRadar, see the interface, how it is like and stuff. So you can say, oh, I have a working knowledge of QRadar, but I'm very familiar with Splunk. They will take that, right? Rather than just not knowing anything, okay? And how do you implement security programs, information security program? Now, this is, mostly this will be a little bit above the pay grade of information security analyst. Maybe not, depending on which level, if it's a senior analyst, right? But you can also say how you help an organization to implement a security program, right? And then with the tool, same thing. What was the greatest cyber risks to your previous organization and how did you handle it? Same thing. If you don't, so this, it can be from any organization that you work for. It doesn't have to be from a cybersecurity organization, right? So, and if you didn't encounter anything like that, I mean, at least every organization will have some encounter like that. So maybe it is not going to be as big on that scale, but even the ones that you think are very petty, they might be big, because those petty little things, that is what is going to lead into the big thing that is going to help attackers to breach the organization,